Hello and welcome to the Coaching Crowd podcast with me, Jo Wheatley, and my friend and co-host, Zoe Hawkins.
Hello and welcome to another podcast episode. And this week we're talking about how to bring creativity to your coaching. And the reason we wanted to do this is because recently we've been developing materials for our emotions coaching practitioner training, which includes a visualization. And our learners have really enjoyed the more creative angle of coaching. So we thought, I wonder what other learners and people interested in coaching might be interested to hear about creativity and coaching and different techniques and approaches you can use. So that has inspired today's podcast and why we are bringing it to you today.
Yeah, and I would consider myself to be a creative coach. And if I wound the clock back, though, to the start of my career, I would not have thought of myself as even a creative person in the first place. But it's part of what I really love about being a coach. And for me, creativity is inherent in the process of building rapport and being in the moment with the client and co-creating the agenda for the session as we go through the conversation. So today we're going to talk through a few different ways that you can bring creativity into your coaching.
Yes. And I've already mentioned visualization, so it seems useful to start there. And for many of you will have come across visualizations before as perhaps part of meditation, or maybe even within coaching. But the way that visualizations can be used is really to help your clients to access parts of their subconscious mind in relation to perhaps topics that you're talking about. So it helps to get your client into a relaxed state. And then let's take it in the context of goal setting, for example. What we know about goals is that if you can imagine achieving the goal that you set out to achieve, it makes it all the more powerful and as if it has already happened. So one way that you can use visualization is to really help your clients to build out a sensory picture of being able to see themselves and feel themselves achieving the goal that they want to set themselves. It helps to almost implant that as it's already happened into their subconscious mind, so they can move forward with a very clear instruction around what it is that they are seeking. Now, visualizations, I think, can be really playful. They can be creative. They can be guided. You can get your clients taking notes throughout them, or you can just guide your client through a script that you write. However, do check out with your client that they can think and visualize in pictures. So we have worked with clients before on our programs that have something called aphantasia, which means they cannot access the visual element of their thinking. And so visualizations with these clients are not going to work and will actually more likely have an experience of them feeling frustrated with the process. So as Jo's already said, it's about co-creating with your client. And if your client enjoys visual thinking and enjoys kind of accessing that more sensory side, visualizations can be a really interesting and powerful way to really change the energy in your coaching and help them to solidify what it is they're thinking and feeling about their goal in a way that it feels like they've already achieved it.
Yeah, I enjoy visualizations, in the role of coachee. Whenever I'm on a course and there's visualizations, as Zoe said, I find it relaxing, but I am quite a visual thinker. So for me, I enjoy accessing it. I enjoy the privacy of it because you're in your own mind. You only have to share with other people or your coach what you choose to share. So there may be some change that's going on for you that you choose to keep to yourself, or you're not sure about what that is. So I think that privacy element can really help. I think there is a piece where people can feel more in control of the process, because we know coaching can be quite demanding when you're in the role of coachee and you're being asked questions and you're doing these deep searches all the time. There is a part of visualization where sometimes people's thoughts take them to places that they don't want to go to. And so if you're going to be creating your own, I think it's important that you've had some training around of it. But you'll also find in coaching books, you will find existing scripts for visualizations, and that will be clearly explained around what they're designed to do and how they can work. So contracting with your client around, is this something that perhaps if they are experiencing a blocker, or as they were saying, if they're wanting a shift in energy, or actually they enjoy the creative side of it and they want to explore it, or they've never done it before. They trust you and they trust the process of coaching. So it's definitely, a tool that can help the clients to achieve breakthroughs in their thinking and make that connection between the conscious and the unconscious mind.
I think another thing that you can bring to coaching is creativity in a form of sketching. So I've used with clients before, actually in a similar vein around outcomes and goals, is to get them to draw what the goal is, or perhaps what the obstacle is that is in their mind. And this is not a test of somebody's drawing and sketching skills. It's really a way to access, again, the subconscious and what is in the way. And you can use that as metaphor, or you can use it as actual reality. So one thing that you might do is invite your client to draw what their life would be like once they've achieved their goal. And they can sketch out some ideas, or you might invite them to work with metaphor. So if your goal was a metaphor, what would that be? Draw that out for me. And they might draw, I don't know, like a ship that represents a voyage, or perhaps they'll draw a rainbow, or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. And then you can just inquire using some curious questions around, so what is it about your drawing that jumps out to you? Tell me more about the rainbow. What does that represent? What's at the end of the rainbow? What's at the beginning of the rainbow? And again, the questions themselves, you're not pre-designing them. You're just being really curious about what has your client drawn, and helping them to really access parts of their thinking that probably have remained unexplored. So you can do this in relation to an outcome. You could do it in relation to a belief. You could do it in relation to a value. Those are some of the key pillars. You could even do it in relation to an emotion. So what are the emotions you're experiencing about this challenge? Draw those out for me. And then once they've drawn them out, you can ask them, different curious questions to help your client to express themselves and process what's going on. And that can be quite a light way to be able to help the client to process and get new insight from the things that are happening in their world at the time.
And excuse the pun, but there is an art to coaching. So what I mean by that, for me, if my client is somebody who has shared with me that they like to draw or paint or do those kind of things generally in their life, then that's where I might think bringing that into the coaching might enable them to access things in a safe way, and they would enjoy that. And I think the art part of it, in this sense, is also around, it's okay for our clients to be uncomfortable in a coaching scenario. So it doesn't all have to be comfortable. Same as with visualization. Client might be a bit, unsure because they haven't done it before. Does that mean you shouldn't do it? No, not necessarily. But what is the aim of it? What is the purpose? And are they prepared to experiment with it? So it's about taking what your client enjoys, understanding the purpose of it, and also where stretching your client out of their comfort zone might serve to help them address something that is currently a gap for them. I, as you know, love metaphors, and you mentioned metaphors there. So, and I was thinking about how sometimes you can draw on the things in the around them. So if I was sharing with you that they had a challenge or a conflict in a relationship, and they were really focused on this thing, and they said, it feels like there's something between us, ask them to describe it. If they can't describe what that is, then say, take a look around the room. Is there anything in the room that represents metaphorically what you feel might? And it might be that they identify something on a shelf or on their desk, or just by asking that question, they're like, no, but I think what it is X. And then you can start to work with that. And also, with metaphors, you can do desktop constellations. So you can invite people to use things that are in their bags or what might already exist to represent people or emotions that exist in their current reality. So it helps them to understand reality, but from a different perspective, from a 3D perspective. So it's about getting the kind of the thinking and the overthinking, the words out, and representing it as physical objects. And that can create a huge shift insights. And then, of course, they can move pieces around if they want to, and also then represent or create what their ideal reality is. And then you're drawing on your other coaching skills to help them identify, what those actions are that might help them get to achieve that gap.
I think for me, creativity in coaching is about being creative in the moment as well. So it's not always about having a tool or a technique or a creative thing that is planned for that session. It's about listening deeply to your client and thinking what's going on for them right now, what's going to be really helpful for you right now. And the creativity might be inviting them to get up out of their chair and move to a different place in the room and talk about their situation from a different place in the room. Or it might be inviting them to try some deep breathing. It's about bringing your courage, I think, as a practitioner into the coaching space to try things perhaps that you haven't tried before, or you haven't done with that client before, or you haven't done for a while in your coaching, because you're really listening that your client needs something different perhaps at that particular moment. So creativity for me is closely linked to courage, which is you as the practitioner having the courage to use active experimentation, perhaps using a coaching tool or technique in a completely different way to what it was intended, but because that feels like that's right for you and you can see a good match for the client, or inviting your client to try something that you create together in the moment. Perhaps it's a role play that you do with your client. If your client has an important conversation coming up that they want to have, inviting them to play that out with you and you deconstructing that together. That can be a really creative way to work with something that the client is trying to implement, but in a safe container that builds their confidence and their assertion that these goals can be achieved well.
Well, you've got things like Lego Play as well. You can learn how to be a facilitator in that, and that can work very well in group settings, but could also be brought into one-to-one coaching. I think for me, creativity is very closely related to my intuition. So, I'm sensing that maybe the client, something would be useful for the client. And as you talked, we're always talking about how you bring the client in. So you could ask your client, how can we get? So you might have just summarized and said, okay, so you came to the session, or, the coaching overall, the goal is this for it. So far, we've done this and this and this. What progress have you made as a result of those things? And maybe the progress is less than you anticipated or the client anticipated, and there feels like there's something in the way. You can say, we've done a lot of sitting and talking. How can we get creative in terms of addressing this gap that we've identified? And then the client actually then has a suggestion. And maybe they say that, do you know what, like, would it be possible for us to meet up? Or would it be possible for us to do some coaching outside? Or next time, could I be out on a walk? Or maybe, if you want to be out on a walk, because I think maybe that'll bring some different energy into it, and I won't be in my workspaces. And I think that could really help me. Great. Like if we agree to that as a contract and it's client-led, fantastic, because ultimately our goal is to help them learn how to coach. Then I think sometimes, like on our coaching training, for example, and I try and keep things quite simple because the work can be quite challenging, but we see people, I was in a meeting yesterday where they were using Mentimeter and, they don't quite work. And it's like, if you're bringing apps in, sometimes people can draw on the screen, you can do it together, the client can move things around, and that can work very well for people that are engaged by that. But for other people, that would be something that would create a barrier between them as the client and you as the coach. So again, it's understanding what people's preferences are in terms of those things. So they might say, apps go for me, I just want to be in this space with you. Or they might say, I'd really like us to be able to bring in different things. It helps me to be able to be very tactile and kinesthetic with my learning and how I engage with it. And you might want to use old-fashioned things like, well, I don't even know it's old-fashioned, but things like labels on the floor. We're talking about getting people up out of their chairs, bringing a new energy. If you're doing longer sessions, say an hour and a half, for example, and you're going deep, part of the skill of the coach is about managing the energy in the session, and how do we bring these things to life? And that isn't because you fancy doing it on a particular day. It would be because your understanding of a tool and what the client has said that they want to do, you think that might be useful. And again, it's about in the process, and being able to break through maybe some awkwardness around it. But again, them writing the labels, doing those things, shift them into a different headspace.
Yeah. And labels can be things about perspectives. So let's say you're working on, well, let's say a goal, you know, you're always working on a goal in coaching, and the goal is to, let's say, build your confidence. You know, that's a, you know, a very broad goal. So what you might put down on a label is some things about the resources that you have within you. So courageous self might be one label that you put down, or challenging self, you know, and you get your client to step into those different states and talk about their goal from those different states. So that's one way of using this concept of labels. And another way, it might be that you're working on a goal and you're looking at idea generation. So you might have a label which is about a mentor. You might have a label that is about a friend, and you might get the client to stand on the mentor label and talk from the persona of that mentor to give them some wisdom and guidance around their goal. So that's what we mean when we talk about using labels to be able to bring creativity to the work. And as Jo said there, it's about the energy management. It's about your clients' needs and desires. And it's also about creating fun in the coaching space. You know, like, yes, there can be times where the coaching can be deep and exploratory, but people want to enjoy the coaching experience. So it's also about bringing the lightness. And I think creativity is a great way to bring, you know, yin and yang to your coaching space.
Yeah, if you think back to like the idea of like this, Edward de Bono's 6 thinking hats, and actually, you know, sometimes if in the moment you feel like, you just say to the client, actually, have you got any hats in your house? Yeah, got loads. Have you not seen the coat behind me? Can you go and grab 6 of those hats? So they're like, yes. And then they bring them back. You're right. Okay, choose a hat that represents, let's say it's a senior and your client is a finance director, and there are dynamics at play in the senior management team when you've got marketing director, HR director, and so on. And actually the physicality of putting the hat on helps them to shift the perspective to be able to view the world through a different lens. And as, you know, ridiculous as that might sound to some people, sometimes that's what we need, because we get so caught up in the words in our own position. It's that physicality that enables us to shift out of it and get into more play as well, where there's more opportunity to grow and, you know, ultimately for the client to be able to identify more options in terms of how they move forwards.
Yeah. So hopefully today has given you some encouragement to go and be creative in your coaching and some ideas that you can use. So do go and do that and enjoy it, have a play, and let us know what you think by coming in and starting some conversations in our Facebook group, The Coaching Crowd.
And if you want to learn how to get more creative when supporting clients with their emotional experience and alignment to their goals, then come and check out our emotions coaching practitioner training. And you can do that by visiting our website, igcompany.co.uk/emotions coaching.